Good morning, Merry Christmas. This is the best time of the year. We can clap, we're excited. Good stuff going on. My name's John, I'm the lead pastor here. We just want to say thanks so much for coming to our church. We're brand new. We kind of just started having services in August, and man, it's been a really, really fun start. And we're excited for all that God has in store for this morning and beyond. Luke chapter 2, it says this. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. It is easy for us to look back at that silent night 2,000 years ago and think of just how perfect it was. Mary and Joseph are in perfect peace. The hay is soft, it's not coarse at all. The weather outside, mid-60s, just a cozy night in Bethlehem. Shepherds are there, encouraging them. Magi silently supporting them. Animals gathered around the manger, and everyone singing Silent Night. That's how we picture Mary giving birth to Jesus that first Christmas. Childbirth is a lot of things. Peaceful and silent are not among them. My wife, Sarah, and I have 2 children. Our son, Dex, is 4, and our daughter, Ivy, is almost 7 months. And we have experienced childbirth twice. When my wife gave birth to Dex, our son, it was just so peaceful. I just held Sarah's hand, and we sang the first Noel in soft, gentle voice with one another in between contractions. I just held her hand. She began to push. We brought some animals in the hospital room just for morale. They were helping for us. She held my hand in such a soft and tender way, thanking me, saying, "You did this to me. Thank you, my love." No, birthing a child is loud. Nothing about it is peaceful. If shepherds and magi came into our hospital room, my wife would be like, "Who are all these shepherds, John? Come on, shepherds? The only shepherd I want in here is Dr. Shepherd from Grey's Anatomy." Unless there's a handsome brain surgeon in the room, get him out of here. The truth was, it probably wasn't so silent of a night, but we often project that Mary and Joseph kind of had no worries, no stresses that evening in Bethlehem. But there was a great tax by Caesar. That affected the local people, especially poor people. And so Mary and Joseph were under great financial stress. Anybody going through that this season? There was no place to sleep. There's no hospital, no. There's no Momos for sure, but there's no Motel 6, no Airbnb. And you don't think Mary was still a little upset about Joseph not believing her? "Joseph, I promise I'm a virgin and I'm pregnant." And Joseph's like, "No." And then an angel appears to Joseph as well. And Joseph has to go up to Mary and say, "My bad, you were right." To top it off, they have some smelly night shift shepherds who show up uninvited and some magi from the east. Financial stress, issues with the living situation, arguments with our spouse, uninvited guests that probably smell bad. The Christmas 2,000 years ago sounds an awful lot like this Christmas, right? Now, the incredible part of the Christmas story is that it's true. It's not some fairy tale. Mary and Joseph were real people with real problems. And Jesus was a real baby, born into a virgin in some podunk town in Israel. Mary and Joseph had to raise him. They didn't get to skip past the sleepless nights. Our worship pastor, Stephen, and his wife just had a baby. My sister just had a baby, her 4th child. I understand sleepless nights. Mary and Joseph didn't get a free pass. They had to deal with that. They nourished him and helped him grow. And I wonder what Jesus was like as a baby and a toddler. We don't know. We are given his birth story, and then one little short story when he was 12, and then all of a sudden he's 30 years old and he's getting baptized in the Jordan River. As a parent of 2 young kids, I'm curious. What was Jesus like as a baby? as a toddler. What were his first words? I remember my son's first words. They were Dad. I know. And I remember it so vividly. I actually got it on tape. I'm sorry, there are people under 30 here. Getting something on tape was a way of referring to video recording in the 1980s and 90s. Okay? Some of you guys thought we were duct taping our kid. So I got his first words on tape. Sitting on my lap one morning, and I pull up my phone, and then Dad. Oh, it was great. I sent it to everyone I know. My wife and I would watch it again and again and again and again. And after sending it to all my contacts, posting it online, watching it 1,000 times, I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before. I was so focused on my son Dex that I didn't notice this video that now had gone viral had a 1 to 2 second clip of me in my underwear. Now I'm rereading my text messages from family and friends, wondering what they meant. Handsome man. I'm like, me? So tiny. What? The Christmas story is real. God became a man. And the prophet Isaiah, writing in 8th century BC, describes it this way: For to us a child is born, to us a son is given. And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. In Hebrew, this is Ki Yeled Yalad Lenu Ben Nathan Ranu. And it means, for unto us a child is born, a son is given. Present tense and past tense. For unto us a son is born, present, a son is given, past tense. Then it goes on to say that he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Everlasting Father, Mighty God. Past, present, future tense. This is horrible grammar by Isaiah. That's like me saying, I am I have and I am currently eating Doritos in the future. It doesn't make any sense. Either Isaiah has horrible grammar, or it's in hope that we can experience the reality of the future. Isaiah was written 700 years before the fulfillment of his prophecy. How can someone look so forward to something that actually transforms their own life then and now? Only by the Spirit of God can we glean hope from an event that will happen hundreds of years in the future. That's what Isaiah does. There is a present reality in putting our present and future hope in Jesus. And we find that throughout the 700 years from writing to fulfillment. We see the people of God hoping for their Messiah, praying for their Messiah. They have tyrannical rulerships over them again and again and again. First they're conquered by the Assyrians, then they're conquered by the Babylonians, then they're conquered by the Persians, then they're conquered by the Greeks, then they're conquered by the Romans. Each succeeding superpower that ruled over them was more dominant and ruthless than before. But they hoped. One day this prophecy will come true. One day the promised Messiah will show up. And he's going to make all the wrongs of this world right. They put their present hope into God's promises of the future. And the same is true for us. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says this: whoever does not know how the austere blessedness of waiting, that is, of hopefully doing without, will never experience the full blessing of fulfillment. Hopefully doing without. I really feel like that describes some of us in our own circumstances right now. Hopefully doing without. Waiting is not staying still, but a hopeful pursuit of God. Keep going. Be filled with hope, even in your difficult circumstances. Some of you need to hear that this morning, to keep going, to keep hope alive, even though you may have 1,000 reasons to give up, because it's failed again and again. And no matter how hard you pray, it doesn't seem like anything's changing. God's word for you this morning is stay hopeful. Have hope. Keep going. Being full of hope while not having the answer. That's the kind of waiting we're called to. And that's the story of Israel. When the world is caving around us, when all hope seems lost, when we are red in every aspect of our lives, we can't pay the bills, and so-and-so's sick, and we can't get healthy. It's in times like this that the message of Christmas shines brightest, because on an unexpected night, in an unexpected place, with some unexpected shepherds and an unexpected young Jewish couple, in an unexpected manger, hope burst forth onto the scene in the form of a baby. Stay hopeful. Miracles happen every day. These past few weeks we've studied the Christmas stories found in the Gospel of Matthew and Luke. But as we close our time this morning together, I want to close with the Christmas story from the Gospel of John. And it's very different. It says this in verse 14 of chapter 1. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. That's John's Christmas story. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. That's the birth narrative in the Gospel of John. It is impossible to overemphasize how important God's arrival on earth was. There was a Scottish farmer who didn't believe in the Christmas story, didn't really believe in Jesus. And one Christmas morning, all of his family decides to go to church. And he says, no, I'm not going to go to church. God would never become a man. I'm a man. I know what it's like. That's not something God would ever do. And so he refused to believe. So his wife and kids went off to church, and the weather turned bad. It actually became a great blizzard. Blinding snowstorm driven by a freezing north wind, and suddenly he heard a thump on the window, and a flock of geese had got disoriented in the blizzard. And the farmer had compassion on them. He went out to them, and he turned on the light in the barn and opened up the huge barn doors and told them to come in, seek shelter from the storm, but they wouldn't go in. He laid out a trail of breadcrumbs, Hansel and Gretel style, nothing. They wouldn't go in. He tried to shoo them in to no avail. Nothing he could do could get them to seek shelter from the storm. Utterly frustrated, he cried out, "Why can't you fools just follow me? I'm trying to give you shelter. I'm trying to help you." Then he thought, I wish I could communicate with them. If I could become like one of them, then maybe they'll see there's a better way. And immediately it hit him. He remembered where his family was and what he had learned in Sunday school as a boy. And at last he understood why God had to become a man. He fell down on his knees and thanked God for becoming man. And as he looked up, to his amazement, the gray geese began to go into the barn. All of the scriptures in the Bible point to this moment where God says, I've tried speaking to you through prophets. I've tried speaking to you through dreams and visions. I've tried speaking to you through the law and the text. Let me show you what I'm like. Jesus. The Christmas story shouts at us that God's primary posture towards humanity is not anger, judgment, or wrath. God's primary posture towards humanity is love, and Jesus proves it. The Word became flesh. I know that many of you in this room got some big problems in your life. We all do. But I want you to know loud and clear that Jesus is bigger than your problems. He's bigger than a negative balance in your account. He's bigger than your arguments with your spouse. He's bigger than issues with your kids. He's bigger than any other issue we might have, any addictions, any struggles, any failures, any shortcomings. Jesus is bigger. The largest animal on earth is the blue whale. Okay, just the flippers alone are bigger than 99.9% of all animals on the planet. If you put 100 blue whales in a jar, it would take millions of those jars to fill out a hollowed out Mount Everest. It's nowhere near as big as a mountain. Mount Everest isn't anywhere near as big as the Earth. In fact, if you stacked hundreds of Mount Everests up on top of each other, it would just be a tiny little whisker on planet Earth. But the Earth isn't anywhere near as big as the Sun. You could fit more than 1 million Earths inside the Sun. The Sun, which is a medium-sized star, isn't anywhere near as big as the red supergiant star like Antares. 50 million of our suns can fit inside Antares. And Antares is nothing like the Milky Way. The Milky Way contains billions of stars, bigger than Antares. And the Milky Way is nothing compared to the universe. In fact, the universe holds billions of galaxies. And yet, with billions and billions of galaxies and billions of stars, the universe is almost completely empty, filled with empty space. And the greatness of the universe is nothing in comparison to the greatness of our God becoming a baby 2,000 years ago to show us how much He loves us. That is the greatness of God. Not in big, grandiose displays of lightning and fireworks and power and might, but in vulnerability, in weakness, in love. Hi, sis. When I was a kid, we'd always try and sing Christmas songs. There's one person in the world that thinks I have a good voice. God. He loves it when I sing. And it started at a young age. I remember trying to sing the words to Silent Night as a kid. And you know how you can sing with confidence, but when you butcher the words, it's funny. And here's what I thought the words to Silent Night said. I would go, round yon verge against mother and child. Apparently, a mother's against like her child, and that's what the song's about. Round yon verge against mother and child. I remember this video, VHS, of me singing that proudly. Even last week, my son Dex came up here and sang songs, and he didn't maybe pronounce every word correctly. But when we were a kid, we would sing the innocence of that song, of those songs. And maybe the words weren't right, but our hearts were more in tune with the song than our voice was. We sang with innocence. We sang with purity. We sang with heart. And so to end our time this Christmas Eve service, I'd like us to sing Silent Night. Would you stand as we sing together? Silent night, holy night. All is calm, all is right. Round yon holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Jesus, we thank you for the greatness that you displayed coming as a baby 2,000 years ago and how it changed things. It wasn't fake news. It wasn't a false, mythical, fictional story. It was real. It was real people. And you grew to be a man who began this new work, this new creation, the redeeming of all things, bringing the kingdom of God, shining light into the world where there's darkness, bringing hope where there is despair, bringing justice where there is injustice. And God, you've called us to be a part of that mission as well. So Jesus, we thank you for that. We thank you for the message of Christmas, that God is love. And you displayed that 2,000 years ago. God, we pray a great Christmas blessing to these families, to every child in this church, to every person here, God. We pray your blessings upon them tonight, Christmas Eve, and tomorrow at Christmas. We love you, Jesus. We thank you for all that you've done and you're doing. In Jesus' name, all God's people said, amen. 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 God bless you. Merry Christmas. And we'll see you next Sunday.